welcome in the very beautiful James Ham, still locked in his bedroom, not allowed out. Our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham. I know you just dropped an episode of the Kings Beat, but of course we're hanging out here. We haven't had a chance to listen. This is our first opportunity to find out how you feel about Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter and the moves that the Sacramento Kings have made over the course of the last 24 hours or so.
Well, I like redheads.
You do?
I'm all in on the gingers.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah. Look, I think these are both good moves. This team needed shooting. They needed more length, which you didn't get from Monk, but you certainly did get from Huerter. They need more athleticism, which you did get from Monk. Mm-hmm. You got a nice tie between Monk and De'Aaron Fox, which, of course, could put him in a better frame of mind all season long. Huerter is a guy who, at the Combine, measured in at 6'6" and a quarter without shoes. And, so he's like 6'7" and a half with shoes on. That tells me he can play the 2 and the 3. He's a good player. Both players are good players. Are they franchise changers? No, but they are rotational players. We talked earlier, again and again about this team probably needed 3 or 4 pieces. Now you're up to 3. You lost one when it came to Dante DiVincenzo, so we're probably a net 2 at this point. And I think they're still primed to make one more substantial move.
Real quick before because I got questions about the potential move and what that could look like. When you talk about the trade for for Kevin Huerter, mm-hmm. I thought it was a great deal for the Kings. You got 2 guys in Justin Holiday and Mo Harkless that just didn't factor into what you were trying to do next season and beyond. And they weren't part of the future by any means. And you were able to get somebody that could be part of your future for the next 3 to 4 years. The thing that I learned from James Ham every time we talk is you got to be aware of that Stepien rule. You got to be aware of those protected picks and things of that nature. They had to give up a little something to get something. I like the way these protected picks are set up, and I like it especially because 2023 isn't involved. So that's a big time draft. A lot of people are trying to be a part of it. And if it all falls down, like Kanye once said, you still got your 2023 draft pick and you're top 12 protected in 2024. So, if you're one of the worst teams in the league again, you don't lose it then either.
Yeah. Okay. So the picks, I think from what I know, it's lottery protected in 2024, top 12 in 2025. Top 10 in 2026, and if it doesn't get conveyed in 2026, it dissolved into 2 second-round picks. Mm-hmm. But here's the rub. That means that you can't trade your 2023, 24, 25, 26, and 27 first-round picks. Mm-hmm. They no longer have access to their first-round picks for the next 5 years. So I think that's a bold move. Especially for a player like Huerter. I would have liked to have seen that as part of a bigger deal for someone like Collins or Collins and Huerter. That would be my only complaint. I kind of feel like every step that we're in here, I like it, but there's something that pulls me back, right? So if we look at the Keegan Murray draft pick, I like Keegan Murray. I think Keegan Murray is going to be a starter in the league for a decade. But on draft night, you didn't do anything to clear up more cap space. You didn't do any trades to add more assets. You didn't bring in another first-round pick. You sold off both of your second-round picks. So while I liked Keegan Murray, I think that there should have been more done on draft night. And, we talk about the 3 angles of improving your roster. The draft, free agency, and of course, trades. So then I feel like when we get to the Malik Monk signing, I felt the same way. Like now the Kings, they got Monk. He's a good player. He fits a need, but all they got left is a biannual exception. And so they've only got $4.1 million really to mess with outside of, league minimum contracts. Mm-hmm. So if you would have done more on draft night, you might have been able to clear up more space for something else in free agency. And then you get to free agency and you get Monk and it's kind of over. You might be able to get a backup wing at $4 million a year. But like, how good of a player are you going to get? Are you going to get someone who's franchise changing? And the answer is probably no. And now we get to the trade market. And once again, I like the Huerter trade. I like that they were able to get him for, he's under contract for 4 years at $65 million. But at the same time, you just locked up the next 5 years of first-round picks. So you can't trade them. You can't go out and add one of those as sweetener to a larger deal to take.
James, I think that's the thing. Like, what deal? Like, there's like we talk about draft and what they should have done, and we bring up Jaden Ivey and maximizing that or maximizing that 4 pick. Maybe there's nothing there. Like, because I was a part of it. The Sacramento Kings just did a deal with Atlanta, and John Collins wasn't involved. Maybe there's nothing to this Collins thing in Sacramento. Maybe Monty doesn't want John Collins. Like, maybe that bigger deal, it doesn't exist. And this is how he has to build it. His big deal was Domantas Sabonis. His main piece is De'Aaron Fox. Now we've got to fill things out with those guys, and I'm cool with using the $4 million to bring back DeMarcus Cousins and call it a day.
No, I get what you're saying, but there's a big difference between Harrison Barnes and a first-round pick on the trade market and Harrison Barnes by himself. And so there might not be a deal today, but we just saw Rudy Gobert get traded this morning, and these are dominoes that fall once that deal happens. And then you've got the potential for a Durant deal. Like, you're not getting Durant, you're not getting Gobert, but can you be the third team in those deals? Can you be someone who picks up a big-time asset in those deals? And a lot of times when you're seeing these monster deals like what we just saw with Gobert, that's built around, Walker Kessler and 3 first-round picks. They're selling it off as, they got 4 first-round picks for him because they got the 22nd pick and Walker Kessler. Well, I don't buy that. But what you did get is 3 first-round picks and a solid young player. The Kings can't get involved in that deal and be a team that gives up a guy like Harrison Barnes and a pick to take back a player that maybe a team that's trading for, or maybe a team like the Nets, they've got Durant, but they don't want to take back a certain player. They want to find a new home for him, but they're going to want something in exchange for that. So an expiring contract in Harrison Barnes and a future first. So that's what I mean. I just think that you did a little bit of damage to your assets in a trade like this. And, it is what it is. I mean, this is the deal they have to do. I really like Kevin Huerter. He's a guy that I've circled for a long time and said I would love to have him on the roster. But we always come back to the question: is this team good enough? How many wins can they do? Can they pick up this season? And you start looking at the roster, and you know that Harrison Barnes is an expiring contract. So whether they trade him now or they trade him at the deadline or they lose him for nothing next offseason, like, you still have an immediacy there that you have to handle. And so, yeah, I like the moves, but there's always something that kind of makes me go, okay, there's something that could have been done differently, or you feel like there should have been something slightly different.
And I don't think that the Kings are necessarily in a position to, this is what I talk about with passive with Monty, to hold out for the perfect deal. Like, find a deal that's going to make you better. And one of the things that I think needs to be the focus here in Sacramento more is, let's get better today. Let's not worry about 3 years from now. You know what I mean? As far as like, well, we can't get better today because that's going to hamstring us 3 years from now. That's what they always do. That's why they never trade draft picks. That's what I've been saying for weeks. Well, we don't want to do that because we're the Kings and we don't want to trade draft picks. I look at this situation, and maybe it's too simplistic to look at it this way. I know it's a complex situation, but you make the trade and you're better. And if you're not if you're outside of the top 12 or outside of the lottery, number one, you're winning. Number two, the whole handcuff of the picks is done because it's already gone over to Atlanta. Yep. Or the other side is, if you haven't conveyed those picks yet, like if you're in the lottery, if you're in top 12, if you're in the top 5, you don't need to be trading for anybody anyway because you stink. So, like, if it hasn't conveyed yet by those points, you got a whole list of problems outside of what came out of this trade. So I just think that the focus needs to start being on, and it seems like it is, like, hey, let's get better today. Let's get better right now today. Let's do what the things that are going to help us today. And let's not be afraid of doing something today because it may not work out 4 years from now.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think that if we look at the trades that they did, they're not just today trades, because I keep like that keeps to be that seems to be something that people are missing. Like, oh, it's such a short-term thing that the Kings are just trying to get better right now so they can make the playoffs right now. It's like, no, Kevin Huerter's 23 years old. He's under contract for 4 years. I mean, he should be in Sacramento either as a starter or 6 or 7 man in your rotation for the next 4 years. And even then, he's still young enough for to stick around for even longer. Again, Malik Monk, 24 years old. I like the fact that they're going with players around this age. I think it's a good idea because then this team can grow together. And so I don't have any problems with the players that they brought in at all. I actually think that every single step of the way, they have gotten better. But it has to be about more than just like each individual deal, because they're adding up to look at something that is kind of boxing you into a specific rotation and a specific lineup for a certain amount of time. And you need to have the ability to always look to improve. Like the Golden State Warriors don't sit on their hands and say, oh, we've got Steph and Clay and Draymond and that's all we need. They draft well. They add savvy veterans because they're a good team and players want to play for them on the cheap. But they also they keep evolving on who they are. And what you can't do is put yourself in a situation where you can't evolve because you've limited what you have in the future. And so I think next offseason, they did just spend probably $24-25 million of what we've talked about their cap space for next year. They did just eat that up. But that's okay because, again, this team is always going to struggle to find free agents to bring frontline guys in. As far as who you could have got on the market at $8 million, $9 million for Malik Monk, I'm in. To me, that's a good pickup. Were there players that I liked better? Maybe, but they're all in the same sort of realm of players, the same level of players. So I like Monk, and I like his potential to get better. I like Huerter's potential to get better. Huerter is absolutely spectacular off the catch and shoot. He's one of the best catch and shoot guys that you're going to run into. He can even, take it up a notch. Like I've always felt like Atlanta. We talked about this when we talked about Collins. The last couple of years he's lost 3 shots per game, and it's because of guys like Huerter. It's guys like Bogdanovich and Gallinari adding to the mix. Hunter developing. I think it's easy for Huerter to shoot 3-4 more times a game with his ability to shoot the 3. And I could see him jump up to 16 points a game. He's a good ball player. And so that's what I would say. Like, I really like what they're doing. I like the players that they've brought in, but it feels like they just they're playing from behind in a lot of these deals.
Well, I think they're playing from behind, period. They're the Sacramento Kings. They're on a
that's true.
playoff drought. Like there's no situation where they're not playing from behind. And I think Monty is attempting to change that. And I think we talked to Kyle Madsen a couple of minutes ago, and I thought he had a great line. He started here to 2011. This is the first time he feels like, I can see a direction here with this organization. Now, again, we're not. You mentioned the Golden State Warriors. We're not talking about hoisting the Larry O'Brien in June. We're not talking about making a Phoenix Suns type turnaround because we didn't land a Chris Paul and we don't have a Devin Booker. But did the Sacramento Kings get better over the course of the last 24 hours? I think they did.
Yeah, and we talked about better player versus just a better fit when we talked on Wednesday. When I look at Huerter, he's just a perfect fit. Yeah. I mean, an absolutely perfect fit. And if Malik Monk is like, I have some questions about Monk as a defender. Same with Huerter. I'll give Huerter a little bit of a break because Huerter's played next to Trae Young for a ton of his career, and Trae Young doesn't play any defense, so Huerter has to guard the best offensive player up and down the court. So his defensive stats are going to look a little rough. They're not horrible, but I was pleasantly surprised. I went in and dug deep into the Malik Monk file on Synergy and looked at all of his defensive stats, and I'm like, hey, he was actually good last year defensively. Now, maybe it's because he's playing on the Lakers and he was part of a good rotation, but if he can hold his own on the defensive end, that changes what happens here. That changes his value as a player. So as of right now, I either look at him as a really nice Bobby Jackson type player off the bench who can fire it up and give you a bunch of, quick points, or I look at him, if he wants to play defense like he did last year with the Lakers, he's got a shot to win the starting job. And, I think Huerter, again, can play the three. So if you do make a trade to balance out your roster and it ends up costing you a guy like Harrison Barnes and you need a starting level three, Huerter's, over 6'7". He can go play that position. Is he going to be a lockdown? No, but he's a good athlete, 38-inch vert at the combine. He is a good athlete, and, I think he's a player that could take a huge step forward in his career, just I think Monk can too.
Ham, one of the things that was thinking about, did some research on with this whole thing, obviously, I love Malik Monk. I love his talent. I love what he could be in this league. Will he ever actually get there? I don't know. Like I have no idea. I just love his skill set. But I looked at this situation, and this is more of a knock on the Sacramento Kings and more of a depressing thing on the Kings than it is how much I think Malik Monk is pretty good. Is Malik Monk the best free agent they've signed in the last 16 years? All things considered, we got a 24-year-old who averaged almost 14 points a game going into his prime, and he decided, I'm going to come here. And when you looked at I looked at some of these free agents, we're talking about Aaron Brooks, Carl Landry, Darren Collison, Rondo, Bellinelli, Aaron Aflalo, George Hill. I mean, I don't think there's been a better free agent signing to this point in the last 16 years. And that's sad because Malik Monk is a borderline starter.
Yeah, I'll say this. It depends on how Malik Monk plays.
Yeah, all of that depends on that. I was saying, like, as far as that person coming into Sacramento, like, because one of them was Beno Udrith, right? And he played well for the Kings, I think 12 points a game. But when they signed him, he was coming off a season where he averaged 4 points a game. Like, he was kind of an afterthought. So somebody who had produced the season before at that age and decided to come to Sacramento, I don't think there's been an equal comparison.
Yeah, that young, maybe not. I mean, George Hill clearly was a better free agent signing, and they gave George Hill so much money to come to Sacramento. It's like a 3-year, $57 million deal. Yeah, but it did land you. Let's remember it did the 6 degrees of separation. It brought in the scores. So, and then you were able to trade him afterwards. I think you're able to do okay there to get out from underneath that. I think it's an interesting question. Rashawn Holmes is a guy who actually played well above what he was before. It's just hard to say that a guy who averaged 13.8 points per game is the best free agent signing at 24 that you've had.
It's embarrassing. But it's true. At the very least, he's top 3, and that's not an indictment on how great Malik Monk is. That's an embarrassment to the Kings organization and what they haven't been able to do in 16 years. I went through some of these lists. There were a couple, and this was probably Maloof era. There were a couple off season. They weren't signing anybody. They weren't bringing in free agents.
I was there for a couple of those where, they brought in Antoine Wright and Luther Head. They signed Chuck Hayes to a 4-year deal, and then
Chuck Hayes was 47 when he signed that deal.
Yeah, and they had to void the contract because he had a heart problem, and then they ended up giving him, I think, an extra $1 million or $2 million to re-sign again. I think it went from a 4-year $20 to a 4-year $22. after he cleared his heart stuff. They signed John Salmons. John Salmons was
7 times.
yeah, but the first time they signed him as a free agent, they also the other one I would bring up that potentially could be in that was Sharif Abdul-Rahim. But that's right at the end. That's probably 08, 09. Well, no, 07, 08. It's at the end of their run. Sharif wasn't here for a playoff appearance, but he was a good player who had signed a mid-level exemption with, I think, the Nets at the time, and they found a knee issue, and they said nope, and they voided the contract, and then the Kings swooped in and picked up that contract, and then he played here for a couple of years, and then they retired him because of his knee. This isn't a hotbed. It's not a hotbed for free agency, and that's what we talked about, coming into it. I just would have hoped that if this was how you were going to walk into free agency, that you would have had more than just the mid-level, that you would have had more ammunition to go into it with, and especially with all of these expiring contracts. There's only so many times that you can improve your team, and there's only so many deals where you can throw 2 expiring contracts and a first-round pick and first starter, and you did it, and it's over. And so now you don't have that option again. And that would be more to my point about, why I like everything that they've done so far. I don't love everything that they've done so far. They've done good work. They've improved the roster. But at the same time, it just keeps leaving you with that little bit of, could this have been handled differently?
Just a note. Utah might not be done today.
Uh-oh.
If Donovan's traded, where do you think he's going? Just to circle conversation. Just Donovan traded. Where do you think he winds up? Jesse's vote's already in. I'll repeat Jesse's vote in a minute.
Yeah. If he gets traded today, I would say Knicks.
KC?
I'd say Knicks too, actually. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Jesse gets the prize money. There's strong indications that Donovan Mitchell and Miami are that's a thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a deal. It's not done. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Donovan Mitchell to Miami is very, very much a thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're the Jazz,
I'm going to sit back like Brian Windhurst. Now ask yourself, guys, why haven't we gotten a tweet about how Donovan Mitchell feels about this Rudy Gobert trade? Think about it. Ask yourself, James, Kenneth, ask. It's because Donovan knows something. Donovan knows we don't have an update. Wouldn't that be no unsettled tweets? Isn't that the tweet? Donovan Mitchell is unsettled. Tweets about Donovan being unsettled. It's because he knows. He knows something. And I think he knows he's going to South Beach.
Okay.
I should have paused.
Yeah. Okay.
I should have paused and folded my arms because I mean, if you have not seen the clip of Brian Winters this morning, it's just so good, and the gestures, the hand, like everything. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell may very well wind up in Miami before the end of the night.
I don't know how. Like, if you're Utah and you're looking at that situation, there just has to be so much that you can do that's better than what Miami has. I don't care where Donovan wants to go.
Good luck to Tyler Hero in Utah. That'd be my first guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it kind of feels like the A's, right?
Howard?
So the A's, when they traded Matt Olson, they got like this huge, like they got Pache, they got, some really nice prospects in the minors, some really, really like top tier. They got all kinds. They gutted Atlanta's their minor league system, right? And then they just gave away everyone else. Like, oh, Matt Chapman, we'll take a bag of like pretzels, and then Sean Manaea, oh, you don't even have to give us anything. You can just like flip us off, and we'll take that. And then, they just went around the league. And so I don't think Utah is going to do that. If they're going to trade Donovan, they want gold. gold, gold, gold. And so, what do you got?
This is what I always say, though. You can want anything you want. It may not be gold in the mountains.
Oh, I think there is, though, for him.
What's gold, though? What's better than Tyler Hero?
Oh, man. I want Tyler Hero and 4 first-round picks.
Well, yeah, but you established you could probably get that.
You can get the picks, but
get that.
But I don't want that deal. I don't
more than Tyler Hero.
Yeah, I don't want that deal with them. That's my point. Don't give me the team that's in the Eastern Conference Finals half the time. I don't want their draft picks.
But that's my point, though. What you getting better than, because you're gonna need a picks and a player. What you getting better than Tyler Hero realistically? I don't know if that's out there. Everybody else that is better than Tyler Hero is probably happy where they're at, or the team is happy having them.
Yeah, I'm going to a team that isn't historically great. You know, that has, like, you do your homework.
You probably can't make that deal. I mean,
the Kings.
Like, why would Oklahoma City, do that? Like, they've built all this equity with those draft picks. Why would they give them all up to get Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, I wouldn't be looking at teams like that. There are teams out there that that have a boatload of picks that still have all their picks in place.
Me and James talked about the Knicks. And
yeah, well, the Knicks have other people's.
You can give them Obi Toppin. You can give them Randall if you want to. You can give them a lot and the picks.
But so I'll play if you're the Knicks, why do you do that? Why do you give up? So if you're the Knicks, you're willing to relive the Carmelo Anthony thing again, where you have a decent team that you're trying to build around, and you're going to give 3-4 of those pieces away and draft equity to get back Donovan Mitchell. You're willing to relive all that again. Think about that just for a quick second. Let that marinate for a minute. We'll come back. We'll get back to the Kings. Obviously, the news: Rudy Gobert going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. James, curious to get your thoughts on that as well. And apparently, Danny Ainge is just setting the entire state of Utah on fire right now. So we'll come back and we'll talk more with our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, here on ESPN 1320. Yeah, I don't know why you'd want. Yeah, you wouldn't want Randall. That's the other thing.
Randall's probably too far. But
but I take RJ Barrett.
Yeah,
and I take
RJ Barrett and
Evan Fournier because of his deal that it's short term. But then I want 4 first-round picks from them. That's what you don't take the Heat's first-round pick. That's like taking the Lakers or the Clippers first-round picks.
But you might not have a choice. But if you got those two deals, I'd take the Knicks. And I think the Knicks have, if I'm not wrong, I think they got a situation where they got like at least 2 other people's first round picks. So don't they have like a Detroit first round pick or OKC
Dallas's first round picks? Yeah.
They did the deal on draft day, right? Where they didn't draft and they sent Duran to Detroit and the whole thing with OKC where we weren't sure what happened. Because the Knicks didn't draft nobody. They just took future first-round picks for that 11th pick. So I think they got at least 2 of other people's first-round picks.
I mean, Kenny, this is what I've been saying forever. Like, if it's – you said this before. Who else is going to give a better deal for Donovan Mitchell than the Kings? Mm-hmm. You said it. You said it, right? Well, I at this moment, right now, if the Kings would not have done the Huerter trade this morning, would you, if you're Utah and you don't care about where Donovan goes, would you take Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, and 4 first-round picks from the Kings?
The
answer is yes.
Yeah, well,
that's the best deal you're going to get. It is, because the Kings are historically bad. Until
they're not, though. Like I need a player.
That the Kings won't be good.
But I need a player. I need a player in this.
You take Harrison Barnes.
That's not.
And
good.
Then you flip him.
If I can get Tyler Hero, and get Miami. Like it's not. I need a player.
No, because you're 3 years. You're looking 3 years out.
If the Knicks talk to me and I can get RJ Barrett, I'm taking him over Harrison Barnes 10 times out of 10.
No, because you're 3 years out no matter what.
Yeah, so you don't want Harrison Barnes? You
No,
want Harrison Barnes for?
Yes, you do. You want Harrison Barnes because you flip him for another first-round pick at the deadline, and all of a sudden you've got 8 or 9 first-round picks to build around and reestablish. Look at what Danny Ainge did with the Celtics.
Yeah,
He tore it down to nothing and built it right back up with top-tier first-round picks. Boom, boom, boom. Made smart moves.
I'm taking RJ Barrett and 4 first rounders.
You would take no, well, because the Knicks are going to be good. You're not taking. Would you take?
You're banking on So. Let me ask you this: if the Kings had Fox, Mitchell, and Sabonis, they're not going to be good.
You're banking on the Kings being good.
Yeah, but at some point, if you give them enough players, they'll be. So you don't think they'd be good? I'm asking James Ham.
I think they would have a chance to be good, but until the Kings prove that they can be good and they can get out of their own way as a franchise, no, I am taking 3 or 4 first-round picks from the Kings over any team in the league. Any team in the league. Give me the Kings first-round picks. I don't care.
I understand that, but you are giving them Donovan Mitchell, and all you're only getting back is Harrison Barnes. Where I can work with the Knicks and get a player that's young and established, and I'm still getting first-round picks from the Knicks, who've made the playoffs one time in 12 years.
Yeah, but
the Knicks are very Kings-ish.
No, they are, but still, Barrett he doesn't fit your timeline for all of these picks that you're doing, for the rebuild that you're doing, and you might be able to flip him for more down the road. But this is what I was talking about. Hey, while you stepped away, Damian, I was like, what if the Kings hadn't made their trade today, and they had all of their picks and Harrison Barnes and maybe Richaun Holmes, make the salaries work? Would you take Harrison Barnes and Richaun Holmes and 4 Kings first-round picks over anything else that you can get in the league?
Let's bring that to the radio. That's interesting. That was an argument. I wasn't even going to ask. I was just going to let you. I wasn't even going to tell you we were on the air. I was going to let y'all just keep arguing.
Damn, Jesse said the Knicks have 4 first rounders next year. Jesus.
Yeah, the Knicks have.
Where did that come from?
They have trading them.
They have Dallas. They have Dallas's pick. I know that.
Do they still have Dallas, or did it go this year?
I think we're coming back, guys. Hang on. I got up to go grab some green juice, and I came back, and all hell was breaking loose. It was like the end of a Raw back in 1998, man. I don't know what was going on. But James and KC were going at it. So James, reset here. 1320 Kings Insider James Ham, creator of the Kings Beat. New episode out now that you can listen to at 4 o'clock. Reset this discussion that you and Kenny were very, very, very passionately discussing here for those on Odyssey and 1320 AM.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this a couple of times, that who else could offer a better deal than the Kings? We discussed it during the season. If, can Utah get a better deal for Donovan Mitchell than something like Harrison Barnes, Richaun Holmes, and 4 first-round picks from the Kings? And the answer is I don't think so. I mean, the Kings have not made the playoffs in 16 years. They have been in the lottery for 16 years. They have been in the top 5 3 times in the last 5 drafts. This is the team. If you wanted to dump and you wanted to roll the dice on who is going to botch it and not reach the potential, it's always the Kings. It's a team I cover, but not to be. It is what it is. I mean, this team has found ways to not succeed for 16 years. So if I were Utah before today, now it's too late because you just gave up all of your picks. You didn't give up all your picks. You gave up the ability to go get those picks, right? Now, could you call Atlanta and say, hey, can we just pull all the pick protections off the 2026 pick and it's just yours and we're going to go trade a bunch of other picks? Sure, you can do that. That's allowed. They could pull the 2025 They could make the 2025 unprotected. Kings could give up 23, 27, and 29, right? So they could still offer 3 first-round picks in a way if you were able to talk Atlanta into something. But that's my point about tying up all your draft capital. Huerter's a good player, and I like that they made the move to get Huerter. I think he can impact winning. I think he's a perfect fit, all that stuff. Donovan Mitchell is a game-changing player that completely, if Utah is going to blow it up and he's going to become available, and you could have put a package together, then that's just like okay. Because I think that what the Kings can offer is better than anyone else.
Can I respond to something real quick, KC, before you jump in? Is because you brought up my pushback to be with the Kings proposal is those players aren't good enough for what Utah could get. And you look at, you mentioned the Boston Celtics. Let's look at what the Boston Celtics did. They made the playoffs 6 years in a row with the greatest NBA championship according to them in history.
Yeah, they for sure.
The big reset that they had. Doc Rivers wants out. He doesn't want to be a part of a reset. No problem. Brad Stevens comes in. That year they finished 25-57. They haven't missed the playoffs since. Their big reset was one single year. 25-57. The next year they were 40-42, but they made the playoffs. They made the playoffs every year since then.
Yeah, Danny Ainge is a wizard at that. And what James is saying, I understand completely. I disagree. Where we go our separate ways is, I think the Knicks have a better package than what the Kings could offer, because I'm talking about the player. I think James mentioned Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, and 4 first rounders. And if the Knicks are offering R.J. Barrett and 4 first rounders, I'm taking the Knicks pick. And we didn't even talk. Somebody mentioned it in here, and I forgot. We didn't even talk about what OKC could do if they really went Donovan Mitchell. OKC blow everybody out the water.
It's never going to be about the player that they can get now. Because
but the picks, they got OKC has been good in I don't know how long.
Well, yeah, so OKC for sure. OKC could put a package together that's better than the Kings. I totally agree. But again, a lot of OKC's picks that they have, they're from good teams. They're not great picks. I mean, we saw it this year. You know, they have a bunch of picks, but you got picks from the Lakers or you got picks from the Clippers. You got,
that Lakers good pick is a good pick.
You think that's what Danny Ainge said about Brooklyn?
What's that?
You think that's what Danny Ainge said about Brooklyn back in 2013? Oh, they're good. We're sending them Kevin Durant. We're sending them Kevin Garnett and Raja. We're basically sending them our entire team here, and they're sending us their picks for the next, I think it was 27 years.
Yeah, but they were all aging. No, I mean, look, if Danny Ainge is if Danny Ainge is clearly going to hit the reset button, and he just took 3 or 4 first-round picks. It's just 3. Let's just say 3 first-round picks from Minnesota. Minnesota is a very good team to take picks from. They historically, again, are like the Kings. They waver between, oh my gosh, you think they figured it out, to, oh, they're trash again. Like, that's where they sort of live as a franchise. Whether Gobert fits there or not, who knows? I mean, that is in itself a massive gamble that you think that you can run Gobert and Cat out there together. Maybe it works, but there's also a good potential that that's just like, oh man, you just locked yourself into a massive, what's he owed, $160 million? I mean, it's a lot of money to go for Gobert, and
they are locked in.
It takes all your picks. All your picks are gone. So that's where I'm like, okay, I'm trading with Minnesota. Minnesota hasn't proven to me, like throughout the course of time, that they can get out of their own way. Those are the teams that you go and you trade with if I'm going to give up a Donovan Mitchell. Like, straight up.
So if you've already done the Minnesota deal and you can grab, and I mentioned Tyler Hero, obviously more is coming back than Tyler Hero if this deal with Miami winds up getting done, but you're all you're doing is just accumulating more draft picks. I don't know. I'm not, if you can grab a couple of players in addition to the draft picks and you already got Minnesota's draft picks, why not?
Because the picks that you're getting are like we're talking about 25, 27, 29. We're talking about, future assets. 23, I think they've got a pick coming in from Minnesota, right? But the point is that by the time that the picks that you just got actually come to fruition, the players that you got are going to age out of your system. So if you're going to start over, you start over. That's where it kind of feels like the Kings always get caught in the middle. They don't fully start over,
Understand.
I agree. And I'll say this. I mean, whether I say Knicks or OKC, and he said, I mean, to Dam's point, the Kings are top 3, top 4, situations you would want to deal with. I absolutely understand that.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's not like the Kings can't figure out a way to do something here. They actually could. It would just take some work with Atlanta, like a phone call like, hey, can we throw it in a second? We're just going to do this. And hopefully that makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it would still be difficult to figure out. And there's no guarantee that a Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox backcourt with Sabonis would ever work. There's not, and if the Kings thought that they were in line for something like that, they had to have heard, like, everyone in the league is hearing back channel stuff at this point. That's the way the league works. Everyone knows that this thing might have been heading for a complete blow up. And, there's good chance that they've had conversations. They had all kinds of conversations last year regarding Harrison Barnes. And I would assume that they would have probably had conversations starting this year before Utah decided to, wipe out their franchise.
Man, an off season where Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell get broke up and both sent to different teams. And Kyrie Irving, who tweeted a cartoon of a bird escaping a cage and flying away today, and him and Kevin Durant get traded and split up.
That guy's hilarious.
I'm not sure that anyone is trading for Kyrie. Like,
somebody trading for Kyrie.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah,
it's so good. The Lakers will do it. Like, if they can find a way to make it work, they'll do it.
Okay, that might be a team. Might be a team.
You're always going to believe the one that you can. You're the one that can make them change.
You never are.
Yeah, it's like the basic rules of the NBA. You can always you'll figure it out here, and they're always going to be much better once they leave Sacramento. Those are like the basic rules of the NBA. Yeah, if we get them out of there, they'll be fine. Like, yeah, we can fix it. Like, all right, good luck with that.
Overall, I like the Kevin Huerter stuff, but you bring up a question. I think a lot of you mentioned this earlier, and I think this is what a lot of people are asking themselves is this it? Like, are they done? Like we were preparing to start the 12 o'clock hour with like, all right, we were really happy with the way we ended the show yesterday. We've liked Malik Monk. Obviously, Kenny has liked him for years, dating back to Kentucky, but it fell awfully quiet after that. So the Kevin Huerter things comes in, and I think what we settled on, I'll speak for Kenny here. If this is the roster, okay, they're better. If this is the roster, it's okay. I get the feeling you disagree, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they are better for sure. And I think having a coach makes them better. And I think De'Aaron Fox in the right state of mind makes them better. And I think Sabonis for a full season makes them better. And I think Keegan Murray makes them better. Like, what's the subtraction at this point? They lost Damian Jones, which I would have liked to have had as my backup center as opposed to the other 14 people they have playing center on the roster. He just, to me, makes more sense as far as age and like what he brings to the table, everything else. But those things happen. Outside of that, they've lost DiVincenzo, and you replaced him. I think you're a better team for sure. But, when we talk about improving the roster, I think the biggest thing that we kind of settle on is that the best way for the Kings to improve their roster was to get someone who's so good that it pushes other players down to a better spot in the rotation, like as who they are. And I still think that they haven't done that. So yes, they added to the peripheral. They added to the rotation, but it always will come down to, at this point, is De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Harrison Barnes, who are still your three best players, are they good enough? Because last year they weren't good enough with the group that you had around them. Now, how do you push forward with those three still as your best three players? And that's all. Like, can they get better there? And I hope that the answer is in the next week that yes, they can.
What if I told you, James, one of those two guys, Huerter or Malik, can push Harrison down to your fourth best player?
If who can?
That if Huerter or Malik Monk can push Harrison Barnes to your fourth best player,
I would ask you, in what world have those two ever shown you that they would be better than Harrison Barnes? And that's not a disrespect.
No, I get you. But I mean, Malik, they're 23 and 24 years old, and they continue to get better. I don't know Herter's progression, but Malik Monk has gotten better every year of his career. Harrison Barnes, I like Harrison Barnes a lot. I actually kind of hope he stays with this group. I mean, Harrison almost, at least this past year, would give you like the Willie Cauley-Stein averages, right? Where Willie will average 8 rebounds because he has 16 one night and 0 the next.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's kind of where Harrison gets his averages from right now. And I don't know if those guys can't be better than that, just by being more consistent.
Yeah, look, I mean, Huerter, I dig Huerter. I keep saying he's a perfect fit for this team. He's a catch and shoot 3-point specialist. Like, can he do other things? Yes, he can do other things, but his real genius is as a catch and shoot guy moving along the perimeter. Like, can he do more than like a Kyle Korver? Yes. Can he reach Buddy Hield height? I don't think so. And we could say the same thing about Monk. I would say that you have a better chance of Keegan Murray becoming a player who's better than Harrison Barnes than the other two guys. And again, that's not taking anything away from these guys. Like 5 years into their careers, they kind of are who they are. Can they improve statistically? Yes, a different situation can change the calculus, like how many shots they get, how many opportunities they get here and there. But let's not pretend like Kevin Huerter comes in. He was like 13th percentile in the league in isolation offense. Like he doesn't create for himself. So it's not like he has this potential to go from, 10, 12 points a game to 25.
Right.
Does he have the potential to go to 16? Yeah. That means he hits, 2 additional threes a game and loses a little bit here and there, like 2 or 1.5 threes a game, and you're there. That's possible, right? But to expect something like from these guys that's completely counter to who they have been as players, that's not fair to them.
But that's kind of my point, James. If he gets 16, he's better than Harrison. Harrison was 15 a game last year?
Oh no, Harrison was 16, and not only that, but Harrison also averaged 6 rebounds, 6.5 rebounds. A bunch of assists. He's a better defensive player. Like Harrison Barnes, again, is a player that can play 35 minutes a night and give you league average all the way around. And like we talk about PER, like Huerter's like a 12 PER guy. Like he's below league average PER, player efficiency rating. And I'm not trying to take away from him. I'm just telling you that's where. And in Atlanta, he's going to have. I mean, he has way more opportunity in Sacramento than he did in Atlanta, just because of sheer volume of players out there.
Yeah.
So, like, we can expect improvement from these guys. They're 23, 24 years old. We can expect improvement, but don't expect them to be something they aren't. And also be realistic about how they fit in and how they can improve a team. Just in fit alone, they should be able to add wins, over what the Kings had last year. But, that doesn't mean that they're going to change everything. You're still, the things that drive your team are your stars, are your big name guys. They're the ones that help the other guys be really good at what they're doing. And if they're not good at what they are, if Fox and Sabonis and Barnes aren't good, then it's really hard for the other guys to pick up the slack. We've seen it time and time again.
The other thing about that real quick, Damien, is I don't look at those guys to come in and change everything, but I do look at them as possibly taking a load off of Harrison Barnes, where a lot of the times when Harrison doesn't score, like it's detrimental to this team. Like they can't survive that. Well, if you have Huerter and Monk giving 12 to 13 apiece, now Harrison maybe doesn't have as much pressure to score 18 to 20, for this team to be competitive. And maybe that helps his game out a little bit more as well. Just working in unison and more people on the roster that can kind of help him if he just doesn't have it that night, if he's worn down or whatever the case may be. That's all.
Yeah, and to get back to like sort of your Willie Cauley-Stein comparison with Harrison and rebounding, there's a big difference between a guy who goes like 1 for 14 from 3 one night and 6 of 8 the next, and a guy who consistently goes 3 for 7. And so you swapped out.
We're going to take jabs at Buddy Hield.
Buddy.
It is never, ever, ever going to end.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like my dude Brett Huff, shout out Brett Huff. He put out that last year the Kings paid Buddy Hield, or Buddy Hield will make $20 million this year. I think last year he made 22. And the Kings are going to pay Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter $24 million this year. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not relying on one guy to do a whole bunch of stuff and to have him not be able to fulfill that role on a nightly basis. I think there's a big difference between being able to pencil in Huerter at 12 and Monk at 14 points versus Buddy Hield at 8 points and 26 and 13. And like, you can write in pen with some of these guys. You could never write in pen with Buddy.
And all those 5 moments per game that pissed off Mo Harkless, Harrison Barnes are gone. So
yeah, no, that's true.
There's that. I love that we brought up Mo Harkless like 2 days ago. Hey, we haven't talked about Mo Harkless all season, and he's traded on Friday. So there you have it.
I mean, and people forget Alex Len is on this roster all the time.
And we keep like, when we had to bring that up when we saw, God, did he go to LA, Damian Jones? I think we all kind of like Damian Jones, but it was also, you can't add money to the center position as long as you have Alex Len on the roster. Like I started to wonder, how confident Monty was in his ability to trade, or maybe, because you can't sign guys unless you unload some of those guys. And it made no sense to bring Damian Jones back if Alex Len was still here.
Well,
and Alex Len is still very much here.
And you keep saying Alex Len, you forget that you have Rashawn Holmes.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. I'm talking more from the third center position. I'm assuming Rashawn is the second center. Alex Len is hopefully the seldom needed third, but
yeah, it's a mess. There's a lot of work to do still, and I hope that they're able to figure out ways to make it. It doesn't have to be major tweaks. They could make one major tweak, but they got to figure out a way to continue what they're doing. These little steps forward that they're doing right now. Yeah, keep doing them.
Harrison is the one major tweak you think they can make?
Yeah. Yeah, I still think that Harrison's the guy that has the most value out there and can get you something.
We're running out of time. Terrence Davis suddenly an odd man out here.
I don't know. You're going to have these guys play small forward too, and they don't have a natural like third point guard either.
Huerter and TD both in the 3 position?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you need 5 guards, especially if you're going to run some 3-guard sets. Okay. I mean, we talk about that. Like, they just traded their only backup small forward. Mo Harkless was the only guy backing up Harrison Barnes, and Harrison Barnes on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
So, so somebody's got to play that 3, and I expect Huerter to play quite a bit. I mean, he's just such a good floor spacer.
James Ham toughed it out this week, joined us here a couple of times. Some tremendous work over at the Kings Beat, including a new edition of the Kings Beat podcast, available for you wherever you get podcasts from, as is the D-Lo and KC podcast. We appreciate you so much for being with us this week. We appreciate you so much for allowing us to be a big part of your Sacramento Kings coverage, and we hope that